When Jujutsu Kaisen came to an end back in 2024, I was slightly disappointed. I didn't think the ending was the worst thing in the world, but it also wasn't the best thing either. It was simply underwhelming. Around that time, the conversation went from discussing the ending and its quality to a sequel? I was not a believer of that whatsoever. From my perspective, the series, although underwhelming with its conclusion, managed to tell a solid story with characters I still love and adore to this very day. A sequel, whether it was right after the events from the series or a spin-off, didn't seem like it would do anything for the story of JJK, nor something I would actually care about reading, putting aside the immense name power JJK has as a brand at this point. Obviously, I would read the sequel. Why wouldn't I? But I didn't have high expectations of the possibility of it happening, let alone being something that was worthwhile, even if it did happen. It didn't take long for me to be wrong about that, as Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo got announced to be a spin-off sequel to the main series. Also, aliens? The main cast are close to dying if not already dead? Yuta and Maki's grandkids are the main characters? This seemed interesting, but would any of that be actually meaningful, or would it just be a continuation of the story just for the sake of it? You read the title of this video. Let's talk about Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo and how it completely proved me wrong. To talk about Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, first we gotta ask the question, what makes a sequel worthwhile? There's the characters, whether it is new characters or established characters that we already know and love. There's the themes and what they are, how they're tackled in this new sequel. Then there's the plot, the world building, and so on. Now, I want to preface by saying that Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo is not particularly perfect, and I feel like that's due to the fact that this series was never meant to be long. It was always meant to be a 3-volume one and done type of deal. But with the 25 chapters Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo does have, it managed to resonate with me on a similar level as the main series. Yuka and Tsurugi Okkotsu are characters that I managed to fall in love with in less than a volume's worth of the series. And the reason as to why that is because of how Gege Akutami managed to effectively use Yuta and Maki to propel their characters in a way that made you connect with them. Yuka connected with his grandpa in his last days alive to the point in which he decided to give her the ring, which has had so much importance to him since all the way back to not even the first volume of JJK, but Zero. Tsurugi bonded with Maki as he doesn't have cursed energy much similar to her, and the dynamic between these four kinda gets flipped on its head as Tsurugi gets given the ring despite Yuta's wishes. Yuka wants to get the ring back since Yuta gave it to her, while Tsurugi, after Maki telling him that he doesn't need it, wants to prove to everyone that he is strong enough to not need it. This is in no way a complex conflict, but it's one that is extremely effective when showing the motivation between these two, and despite the potential resentment one of them can have towards the other because of this, Yuka and Tsurugi still manage to care for each other as siblings. I have yet to talk about Maru and the Simurians, but I really just want to highlight how incredibly easy it is to get on board with a sequel when you have the main characters be this genuine and likable. Because of this sibling dynamic, I very quickly began to care about them and wanted the best for them as the series started to unravel itself. So now that I established Yuka and Tsurugi, let's address the elephant in the room here, and that is the Simurians. I truly can't believe even now that we are talking about aliens in Jujutsu Kaisen. If you would have told me this back in 2024, I would have had a fucking stroke. To say that this was a risky move by Gege Akutami would be a humongous understatement, because it could have been so easy for the inclusion of the Simurians to not be taken seriously by everyone, because the concept of aliens in Jujutsu Kaisen sounds absurd. Even now, after going through Modulo, it just sounds like it should not fucking work. Yet somehow, Gege Akutami not only made it work, but made the inclusion of these aliens into the world of Jujutsu Kaisen be one of the most interesting things I've read in quite a while. Despite how short Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo is, Gege Akutami was bold enough to basically have a humongous portion of Modulo to be about the conflict of coexistence between humanity and extraterrestrial beings. Maru in chapter 1 is the first Simurian that we see, and he's extremely lighthearted to the point in which he kind of creeps out both Yuka and Tsurugi, which is funny. But then we start getting into the other Simurians, for example Cross, Maru's brother, who is extremely hesitant. He is very doubtful and a skeptic about everything that is going on. And then we look at the other Simurians that are in communication with the higher-ups in Japan, and there is this thing that happens where, despite coexistence being the goal, there is a lack of trust between both sides. And because of that very lack of trust, that's where the tension in Modulo really is at. Because what are these Simurians capable of? I mean, you look at a character like Dabura, who we see clearly in chapter 2, and it is easily one of the most threatening looking character designs in the entirety of Jujutsu Kaisen point blank. What the fuck is he capable of? What could possibly happen if a full-scale battle between Jujutsu sorcerers and Simurians were to actually break out? Basically, the Simurians on Earth pushed out of their planet, trying to find a new home. They want to have a life of peace after going through essentially a black void of darkness for so long. And of course, humans don't want to have issues with extraterrestrial beings because the uncertainty of how bad things can get if a battle between humans and Simurians break out is scary. To say that I was thoroughly impressed with these stretch of chapters would be putting it lightly. I couldn't help but really appreciate how much Gege really felt like he was hyper focused on telling this story despite how short it was. I really wanted to see more of it. And that's the biggest sin of Modulo if you were to ask me. I really wanted more out of this. This tension, the character dynamics between humans and aliens felt very engaging to read. And this is why I titled this video Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo Proved Me Wrong, because truly I didn't think Modulo would be this engaging. And so far, all of this is mostly dialogue. Modulo doesn't have many fights at this stretch of the series. So what happens when we get them? And this is the perfect segue into talking about the second elephant in the room, and that is Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo was not illustrated by Gege Akutami, but it was illustrated by someone else named Yuji Iwasaki. Another doubt that I had coming into Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo was the fact that someone else was illustrating it. One of my biggest fears was that with Modulo, Gege Akutami's art would be missed, because I really loved the art of the main series. I really did. And having someone else basically illustrate the sequel. Now, if you remember, back when Jujutsu Kaisen was on its way to the finish line, Gege Akutami literally had a surgery and stopped drawing Jujutsu Kaisen for a while and then came back into the grind as if he didn't have a whole surgery. Like, obviously, from that lens, this was a good move, but I was afraid for how the art was going to come across to me, because getting used to a completely different art style was not something that I was ready for. And yet the moment the battle between Mahoraga and Dabura begins, alongside Maru and Tsurugi, holy fuck, man. If Jujutsu Kaisen decides to have a full-blown sequel that is longer than 3 volumes, Yuji Iwasaki should be the illustrator if it's not Gege Akutami, because I can't tell you how impressed I was on a weekly basis when the fights actually came in the second half of Modulo. The art was enjoyable to read early on, but when it came to actual climatic fights like the ones that happened next, I was not sure how Yuji Iwasaki was going to nail it. And by God, he did this shit with so much ease. This second half of Modulo really felt like a renaissance of JJK, believe it or not. It felt like the spirit of JJK and how energetic I was when it came to reading Jujutsu Kaisen on a weekly basis came back in full fucking swing. And when you get these feelings out of me, that is how you know you are truly invested in what's happening. Now, I want to be transparent, and actually I'm going to drop a hot take here, but surprisingly, Yuji's introduction back into Modulo, as very important and huge as it was, not gonna lie, after this point, I kinda started losing a little bit of steam when it came to Modulo, because in a lot of ways, I felt like Modulo shined the brightest when we were focusing on the newest elements of the series. And the ending, while still having that good feeling of satisfaction as someone who enjoyed reading Modulo, I did feel like Gege was kind of trying to juggle these new concepts with what has been established in Jujutsu Kaisen overall and try to make sense of it all. And because of how short this series is, I didn't think it had enough time to truly flesh out and felt as satisfying as it could have been, which unfortunately is a repeated sin of Gege with Jujutsu Kaisen main series, because I felt that way then, and Modulo is kind of a repeat of that, but at a much lesser degree. All in all, I really had a fun time with Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, and it completely proved me wrong on the idea that a Jujutsu Kaisen sequel wouldn't work, let alone not exist. I'm always glad whenever I get proven wrong like this, because not only is it a humbling experience, but it also manages to show you how these authors are able to make things that you wouldn't think would work actually work. And all of this just makes me even more excited for whatever is next with Gege Akutami. Those are really my thoughts regarding Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo at the moment. I want to know what you guys think in the comment section down below, as I am really interested in what you guys have to say. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And with that, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day wherever you are. See you guys in the next one.